Hello World Doll Day friends, this is Michael Canadas with the Carmel Doll Shop and the Grovian Doll Museum. Today we are in beautiful Southern California and we are visiting the home of Susan and Lou Nunez. You're in for a treat. This is a fabulous collection, one of the most beautiful I think I've ever seen in the world, and we've seen a few things. So we're going to start by showing you what you would see first when Susan or Lou greeted you at their door. So come on in. I think you can get the picture that Susan and Lou are antique collectors and have been collecting antiques their whole lives together. And a matter of fact, Susan's mother and father were both antique collectors. They have gone through many phases of collecting. But Susan's real love is the 18th century French style of the court of Louis XVI. And you can see here we have a beautiful representation of court dolls, and what this has to do with We Serve fundraising with dolls is one of the main fundraising apparatus in the 18th and 19th century were balls, costume balls, which would require fancy dress. So what we have here is a fantastic collection of French fashion dolls dressed in a style 100 years before their time and then some. I should start by saying this is shows Susan and Lou's genius for display. Once upon a time, this was just a niche for a beautiful statue. And then one day, Susan decided to turn it into a cabinet. And then it became this palace. So I want to point out the dolls. What's very interesting is many of the dolls are costumed in 18th century fabrics. So they're 19th century dolls dressed with 18th century fabrics. And it really is a study group of different makers. Now, you ask, why would a 19th century doll be dressed in 18th century clothes? Every shop in Paris had costume dolls. So in a way, they were toys, but they were also decorative objects. So I think we should get down here because it's worth a stretch to get down here, and we have a beautiful table that's all laden with old Paris porcelain and beautiful food objects, Saint Louis glass, and then we have a fabulous Jumeau, and trust me, this was intended to be a costume doll because that beauty spot is painted on and fired. And you can see it has a beautiful costume, delicate, with a lot of fantastic embroidery. And then we probably have a very early Barrois man with real silver bullion on his costume. And it looks to me from here like some 18th century embroidery. And one thing that you'll see in Susan's collection, she has probably one of the finest collections of miniature chandeliers that you're ever going to see. And then probably another Barrois over here with a towering wig. And then a beautiful Jumeau in the back. Both Susan and Lou are very detail orientated, so you're not going to find a doll without the proper jewelry and wigs and necklaces, etc. So now shall we go upstairs? Now, this is a beautiful brew with a fabulous costume. And the brew, of course, most of you know, is based on Empress Eugenie. And she was one of the first collectors of artifacts from Marie Antoinette. And as a matter of fact, there's a very famous painting of her dressed in fancy costume as Marie Antoinette. And then we have a beautiful boy in some nice 19th century brocades. And of course, all of these dolls have all the fittings, the beautiful furniture, the lightings, girandoles, and this lounge is incredibly beautiful. Look at this water gilding, which is in just perfect condition. And I think that this is a very well-known pattern of silk with the peacock feathers, and this was upholstery fabric, but also the House of Worth used that for their gowns. And in the Nunez collection, there's always whimsy. So here we have a 886 Simon and Holbeck little marquee in the beautiful original clothes. And this one, it's one of my favorites. There's some very ancient 18th century fabrics used in this dress, and the silver lace. And by the way, this is considered lace, and it's some of the earliest lace. And a wonderful marquee in the back. And I would be remiss to not point out the Nunez collection is loaded with fantastic clocks. The collection itself is a fabulous example of miniature timepieces. So we're going to cut for a minute because we've got to go upstairs, and it's not an easy trip. So we'll be right back. I think we should start in the center of the room, which is a fantastic fireplace with a beautiful insert of armalou, which is basically a metal that's gold plated, and it has the fender and a dove symbolizing peace. I would assume that would be peace in the home. Beautiful pair of girandoles, and again, look at that clock. It's a French clock, and it's fantastic. The dolls are not exactly chopped liver either. So we have a beautiful little marquee in a very intense, beautifully embroidered costume. Stunning piece. And he's a little wee man. And this doll, this is a Jumeau, but it really reminds me of Princess Lamballe, who was the best friend of Marie Antoinette. And again, we have a brocade that is very well known, a very precious fabric. And this probably, when this was old in the 19th century, but a beautiful, beautiful costume. And the wig, just to give you an idea of the size of my hand, it's a towering wig. And then back in the corner, we have a lovely gentleman by Deliac. And they always, to me, look like beautiful birds. You know, they have a beautiful face with big eyes, beautiful ice blue eyes. And another beautiful court lady, again with a beautiful brocade costume here. And again, it's a very large wig. And again, I think, again, looks like Princess Lamballe, but look at the little decoration of the hanging of tassel, which is beautiful. And I should point out that, I'm going to get off the ladder, but I should point out that the background is wallpaper, which Susan does a lot of research to get her wallpapers just right. But look at the floor. This was all painted by a artisan to her specifications. So this is a beautiful room, but I want to show you one more 18th century pair of dolls that are in another room. So we'll be right back, and we're going to tootle over there, and we're going to show you a really special pair of 18th century dolls, style dolls. Okay, we're in one of the main galleries of the Nunez collection, and my cameraman / editor David Robinson just told me that I have used the word beautiful too much. I should use fabulous, stunning, etc. But trust me, if you were here, you would be saying beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So before we get to the cherry on top of the 18th century costume dolls, there's a couple more that I completely forgot. So here we have a beautiful scene, and we have a classic Jumeau in a fantastic court costume with a beautiful trim and all the bouillon. I mean, this is, anybody that is doing sewing now knows how hard it is to get all these components. And his date for the evening is a barois, again in beautiful 18th century fabric and beautiful silk velvet and wonderful trim. And again, in the Nunez collection, you're going to find a whole, just a massive amount of gorgeous furniture. Do you know, once you fill up your own house with furniture, the logical thing is to go to miniature. And then, of course, this is actually an automaton. We would call this a waltzer, but they work in tableaus too. And I'm not sure what he's got in his hand, but I think he's writing some kind of a letter. And beautiful miniatures. And then we're going to go upstairs, which we're lucky that David has long arms, because here we have a beautiful early brew with a round face and the first generation bisque arms for the lady doll. And then a Gautier gentleman in wonderful clothes. Wonderful shade of green. And then we have really a rarity, which is a black Jumeau French fashion doll. And he's a petite size. And if I can get the long arm of David Robinson to show the lantern, which again is one of the beautiful light fixtures in this collection. And a very interesting chaise, which is all made out of reed and then gilded. So here is another beautiful tableau, and it has some very special dolls, including the I'm going to start here with the little tiniest little Gautier, and this is probably 11 inches, but it is, you know, in the 18th century, children were dressed identical to adults. There wasn't a child style for children, and this is representing probably an 11-year-old girl, I would imagine. And the same with the boy, who's very cute. But I also want you to see this incredible writing desk, which is also a jewel casket. And I would imagine that once upon a time was used as a gift for an incredible piece of jewelry, although it itself is a jewel. And I think that this pocket watch is something to see too, with a little diamond inserted on top. And then again, beautiful fittings for the fireplace. And of course, a wonderful light fixture. But here's the real special feature of this tableau, are this pair of Gautiers that once upon a time belonged to Mrs. Rockefeller. And they're beautifully dressed. I'm sure a lot of you know that the Rockefellers had a fantastic collection of 18th century art and antiques, and they went on to found the largest museum in the world, which is Williamsburg, Virginia. And these might have been deaccessioned because they are on the fancy side. They are not Williamsburg-like. which is more of a 18th century country town. But it has used all of the 18th century metal lace and the 18th century brocade in the costuming. And these are fantastic dolls. And before Susan and Lou acquired them, they were in the Angel's Attic Museum in Santa Monica, which was a lovely place. So it's nice to know that they're now still close to home here in the Nunez collection. So now I'm going to take you to the, I promise this is the final of this segment, but I think I'm saving the best for last. One thing about being in any kind of industry, when you're in it, you're fully in it, and probably at the end of the day, you don't want to, if you're Henry Ford, you don't want to go home and look at cars. And if you did keep a car or an automobile, or if you're Harry Winston, it's jewels, think about what would Pierre and Emile Jumeau and Madame Jumeau keep? Well, we get to show you this pair of dolls that came from the estate of Emile Jumeau. And it's a pair of classic Jumeaus dressed in the 18th century taste. And they really are perfect specimens. He is a soldier and she is a country girl. Not as fancy as the other dolls we've seen, but she's a country girl. But a country girl dressed in silks and beautiful laces. And look at this darling trim that we would love to have. 400 or 500 yards of that today would be good. Beautiful wigs. So for some reason, of all the millions of dolls that the King of Doll Maker produced, these two were in their home. So it's really a special thing to see them preserved in the Nunez collection. And I'm going to turn them around so you can see the back view. And they have beautiful wig. Look at her wig with all those curls. And the pleating down the back of the dress is just fantastic. And I have never seen a waistband where they've used kind of a coarse lace to create a waistband, but it's just a beautiful combination. And I have a feeling that when this was new, this was probably a coral color, and it's faded to this kind of ecru just from exposure, and he is spectacular. Now it looks like his leather body's showing, but those are actually leather pants, which a soldier would have, and fantastic gaiters. And again, you can see his wig is fantastic. And of course, this was the style for a man to have a hair bow in black. Pretty much didn't matter what they were wearing, that would have been the standard. But this is the end of our fancy dress dolls, although I have to tell you, in this collection, there are a lot more. We've been very fortunate to spend a lot of time with Susan and Lou, and usually we're helping with projects that they have for us to do. But I will tell you, if you are lucky enough to get an invitation, wear your comfortable shoes, because the beauty, which I'm not allowed to say, is exhausting. So we'll be back, friends.
Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button.